This afternoon this is a health session, and I'm happy to come and give awareness on some of the things in health that might help us, all of us. A lot of people are ignorant today. They don't have knowledge, and so Satan has blinded their minds, and our minds too. That is why we are sick. Sometimes we know what is right, but we go against the law, and then we get sick. So then we are not healthy then. Because what is health? I'm doing biblical health. So health is obedience to the laws of God. So there's the natural law and also the moral law. So obedience to God's law is health, mental, spiritual, and physical. And then the opposite is disobedience is what? Violation of the law of God. And as we go away from the law of God, we will invite sickness. For example, let's turn to Exodus chapter 15 and verse 26. Exodus chapter 15 and verse 26. And it reads, "And God said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, will give ear to his commandments, keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee." So obedience, it brings health. Disobedience brings diseases. What God says and we go against, we're going to get sick. For example, one of the laws is rest. And some of us found out yesterday when we didn't have rest, what happened to our blood pressure? It went high. True?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after we understood that we've gone against God's law, what did we all do? We went to bed early. We had some massage. And so in the morning, our blood pressure went down again. So disobedience to God's law brings sickness. So when we are sick, remember what laws of health that God told us to obey am I breaking, and then put it right again, then healing comes to us. One of the other laws is the food. God made this body in his image, in his likeness. We saw that in Genesis 1 and verse 26 and 27. God made us in his image, after his likeness, and then after he formed us out of the ground, Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. Let me just read this one. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And then he said, this is the food that you must eat in order to keep healthy. So that's one of the laws that God has put in his word for us to obey. So we looked at all the list of food that are available that we can use yesterday. What are some of the food that we put on the board yesterday? Health bearing seeds. What are they?
Corn, rice, barley, millet, lentils, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, legumes.
Very good. So those are seeds. God said in Genesis 1 verse 29, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seeds, which is upon the face of all the earth." It's not only in Solomon Island. God says, I put it upon the face of all the earth. means it's everywhere. Sometimes when we travel to some places and we said, oh, there was no food, so we had to eat fish. Or we had to eat meat or something like that. With the climate change, some of the islands are disappearing. I know in my village, people are now moving inland because the sea is now moving inside where the houses used to be. So where I used to be when I was small, now it's deep sea. So those are the changes that has taken place. So maybe some of this food are being spoiled, but according to God's word, it says, the herb-bearing seed is upon the face of all the earth. And every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed to you, it shall be for meat. God said, this is what you eat to put inside the body which I made in my image, in my likeness. And so, God is love. So when He made us, He didn't leave us alone. He makes sure that what we put in is healthy so that we don't get sick. So health is obedience to God's law, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So when we are sick, we have to think, God, show me, open my eyes to see what I have done wrong so that I can put it right again. So then you get better again. Like yesterday, we had that session, which was good. And then we saw that it's fruit trees as well. So what are some of the fruits that we have in Solomon Island?
Mango,
Yeah.
apple,
Mhm. So fruits are easy, we can what? But in Melanesian, we think that fruit is not food, so we don't eat them. But fruits are full of vitamins and minerals which the body needs in order to regulate the body process. So if we don't eat those foods, then we can lack some of the vitamins that are very important to keep us healthy. So don't forget to eat fruits. It gives us chemicals that keep us healthy. And we'll hear some of those. If we have lack of whatever vitamins, we're going to be very sick, or minerals. I'm going to just go through it briefly this afternoon. So I hope you got the message yesterday. Now we're going to move on a bit. And yesterday we looked at this chart too, that this is the digestive system in which most of us people, maybe we are not aware of it, but we are giving some awareness now that the digestive system starts from the mouth and then down to the anus. So in each of these sections of the digestive system, God had put enzymes are chemical that breaks down food into particles in which the blood can absorb it into the system. So in the mouth we have enzymes there, and it's responsible to break down starch, cooked starch. And then in the stomach we have some enzyme there, and it says here enzyme in the stomachs are renin, hydrochloric acid, and pepsinogen. Don't worry about the names, but they are responsible to break down protein and fats. And then fats in the bile, in the gallbladder, it secretes bile salts, which is responsible to break down fats and make it into fats and fatty acids. And then in the small intestine, there are other this enzyme as well. And then in the pancreas, there are enzymes as well and hormones. This is where the insulin is produced, and then it goes into the blood cells. So that's where they are all different types of enzyme, and they digest different foods. That's why when we are preparing food, it's good not to make a lot of mixture. Otherwise, some will rot inside the stomach, causing indigestion, fermentation, could cause ulcers, and so forth. So, and then we had a look at the anatomy of the large bowel. This is the appendix, and it's on the right side, just near the umbilicus. And then that's the ascending, the hepatic flexure, the transverse colon, the splenic flexure because it's under the spleen, and then the descending colon and the rectum, and so it goes out. And then these are the small intestine. It joins onto the large bowel, and the liver is just sitting on the top of this ascending colon. So if you have pain on the right side, think of the liver. If you have pain on the left side, think of the spleen. And around here, think of the large intestine, the transverse colon, and the pancreas, the small intestine. Think of those organs. And if you have general pain here, you could think of the small intestine as well. So those are briefly the anatomy and physiology, brief physiology of the digestive system. But I'd like to go more because diabetes is very, very common now in Solomon Island. The wards, if you go inside, it's just full of diabetic patients that has had amputation of limbs. In the pancreas, there are two cells that are responsible for making sure that the insulin gets into the cells. The alpha and beta cells of the islet of Langerhans, and that is in here. You don't have to know about all these things. And they're supposed to balance each other, the alpha cells and the beta cells. The beta cells secrete insulin, while the alpha cell secretes glucagon, which triggers the turning of glycogen in the liver into glucose so that it can be released into the bloodstream. So one of the cells secretes glucagon, and that triggers the turning of glycogen that is stored in the liver so that it can release glucose to go into the bloodstream. The alpha and beta cells are supposed to check and balance each other. When too much sugar is absorbed, the pancreas becomes worn out and produce too little insulin. And insulin, it needs a tiny amount of chromium, and a lot of it, you can get it from seaweed. Chromium, this substance. And we have seaweeds that they sell in the market. So we can use $10 to make sure we eat some seaweeds as well. It is important to have it. So as to lead glucose through the cell wall. So chromium assists the insulin to put glucose into the cells. And if there's lack of it, it can develop diabetes. Hence, the deficiency of chromium can lead to diabetes. So eating refined foods, that doesn't help people to avoid diabetes. If you eat too much white rice and white sugar and white bread, all those do not give you good food that will avoid you from getting diabetes. A continuous stress can also cause diabetes because it's the fatty acids in the blood shuts off the release of insulin. And then obesity or fat. Obesity is a stress that also invites diabetes. Too much, because obesity is too much fat. And then the insulin has to feed all these extra tissues that are in the body. So don't get too fat, otherwise you might suffer from diabetes. So those are just brief information for you to try and understand why this person has diabetes and so forth, so that you can advise them appropriately, so that you can also help them to come out from that. Because you can help them to come out from diabetes, not to have diabetes. Another information that I'd like to pass to you this afternoon is that some of the evidences of a polluted body you can get is, if you see in a person, is fever, aches, cold, pains, where there is no injury, but all this you see in people. It tells us that there is some evidence of toxins in the system. Constant fatigue, headaches, sinus problem, excessive mucus, psoriasis, pimples, boils, rashes. Those are some of the signs, signs that if we see, it could indicate that maybe this person is not eating properly and has some toxins that are still too much in the system. So it shows itself with all these things coming up. The body will cleanse itself if we allow it a chance. And how to do it is that you just fast, miss a meal or two, and just live on water. And the body should be able to get rid of excess waste in the system. So the body has the responsibility to try and keep us healthy, because God has put a law in there. But if we break that law, then we'll be sick. But if we obey the law, then we'll be healthy, because God has those laws in us. It is the function of our drainage system to prevent the poisons of metabolic waste from taking our life. So we need to keep our body healthy. Sometimes we get muscle spasm. Do you get muscle spasm? That's lack of minerals. So it's good to try and eat some food that has minerals in them, especially potassium. We find a lot of that in bananas. Calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, all those, if we can. But if we try and just eat a specific type of food, that is not a good idea either. It's good to eat varieties, a variety of food, and then we would be sure that we are getting vitamins, minerals, and proteins, carbohydrate, and fats. And don't forget to drink water, because everything is carried throughout the system in the medium of water. So don't forget that one. And so I just want to continue with this health, that if we disobey, then we will suffer. If we obey God, and then we will be healthy. For example, in Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15, I'll just read some of it, and you can finish reading it in your own time. Deuteronomy 28. These are some of the things that if we don't obey, and we can get this thing. 28 verse 15 and verse 22. 15, 22, 27, 35. Let's just pick up some. But, God says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So we won't continue. There's a lot of curses there. You can read it in your own time. So if we have, the Bible mentioned pain in the knee and so forth. If we don't obey what God says in what he says we must put into our body, then we can receive some of these curses that the word of God has stated in here. Then Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 17. Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 17. If you got it there, Frank, can you read it?
Be not overmuch wicked. Be not overmuch wicked. Neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time?
So that's a counsel to us, that if we don't listen, then we will die before our time is up. And a lot of people have died. Last week, I think more than 10 people died. And people are still dying. We don't know why, maybe only God knows. And I'd like to read some of this that I've just put it here. There is nothing that the world needs so much as a knowledge of the gospel's saving power revealed in Christ-like lives. God promises, God is speaking to us individually, directing us if we could listen to his voice. It is in these promises that Christ communicates to us his grace and power. They are leaves from the tree which is for the healing of the nations. Received, assimilated, they are to be the strength of the character, the inspiration and sustenance of the life. So, as we heard yesterday, God, who is the creator of heaven and earth, he is powerful, and he can also recreate our lives where we have sinned and we have disobeyed God and have not obeyed his commandments, and so all this sickness that we see in Honiara now in Solomon Island, and also in Papua New Guinea, in Melanesian countries, maybe the ones over the other side of the world, they might suffer from other sickness, but Melanesian normally suffers from arthritis and rheumatism and diabetes, pneumonia, bronchitis, flu. All those are brought about because we have abused this system, the digestive system, and also the respiratory system, and also the cardiac system. The cardiac system is talking about the heart. Yesterday we saw that if we eat a lot of sugar, We put it into our Milo, coffee, tea, and then with the refined foods, that's too much sugar in our system. Sugar is so concentrated that it absorbs the water, and then it causes inflammation in the lining of the mucous membrane of the stomach. And then if that continues, then it forms an ulcer, and we can have an ulcer in the stomach. And then if that heals and then it continues, the blood that circulates, this can also affect the lining of the arteries inside, which it can also cause inflammation. And if that inflammation heals and then it happens again, then the blood that is passing through is sort of slowed down, and it can form a clot there, which then will occlude or close the lumen of the arteries, and then the blood cannot pass through. Now if it happens in the brain, it can rupture the blood vessels there, because the force of the blood, the heart is trying to force through, because that part of the system might die. The heart wants to get the blood through to keep it alive, and that force could rupture the blood vessels. And then if that happened, then a stroke happened. But if it is in the heart, then a sudden death can happen. So we need to be mindful of what we are putting into our system. Let's go back to God's original diet, and we should be right. But then we need to watch about gluttony. Glutton, I think the Bible said, classed it with drunkenness, because then if we eat too much, it beclouds our mind, and we cannot understand the Word of God as we try to study. So I think to eat just enough to satisfy hunger and to give us energy. Just want to pass on some information from here. The essential nutrients that we should have. Nutrients are chemical substances that are found in the foods, and they function to either make us grow or repair the tissues or protect us from infection. Those are nutrients. And there are 5 general classes of nutrients. There are carbohydrates, and those are energy foods that we normally refer to them. Then there's fats, and there's proteins, there's minerals, there's vitamins, and then there's water. And also there's fiber, although it's not, we don't class it as a nutrient, but it is very important because the fiber then helps to cleanse the digestive system as well. The knowledge and practice of 2 fundamental principles will be the best guarantee of good health. Choose a wide variety of wholesome, unrefined foods. Second, maintain an ideal body weight. These 2 basic principles forms the framework in which the series of how we should be eating is based. So, eat wide variety of wholesome food or good foods, not unrefined ones. And then we must maintain our ideal body weight. I was going to bring the scale and I forgot all about it. So that we can take our height and then take the weight, and that is important so that you must keep the weight at that level. As we grow older, I think we shrink a little bit. So it's good to know and keep the ideal weight then. And we've talked about the basic foods, the fruits, vegetables, and proteins. All those are essential that we have. If we eat varieties of that, we should not be worrying about whether I'm getting a vitamins or minerals or bodybuilding food or carbohydrates, something like that, as long as we eat a variety of food. Because a lot of us, we tend to try and tell people to eat this, and when they go home, they forget, and then they are worried then. But if we can eat, make sure that you don't just eat rice, brown rice whole day, whole meal, or just potato every meal, or taro, or cassava. Try and vary the diet a little bit. And eat some nuts, greens, a lot of greens, because iron is element in which the blood needs in order for the lung needs. As the red blood cell circulates through the lung, it gives off as the deoxygenated blood goes into the lung to get oxygen, so that it can come back to the heart to be pumped throughout the whole system to give oxygen. It needs iron in the red blood cells, because that iron then attracts oxygen. So the hemoglobin needs the iron in order to get the oxygen. And if we lack iron, then there's not enough red blood cells to absorb the oxygen, and we can be having difficulty in breathing as well. So if you are getting difficulty in breathing, but you don't have flu or anything like that, think of the blood. Or maybe I don't have enough, I must be anemic or something like that.
How does blood circulate through the lungs?
Okay, that's another a big topic.
Okay.
You want to have us to go through now. See if I can still remember. So we'll have the heart, and it's divided into four. I think there's three of them here. No, I can't remember very well, but I'll try. So this is the heart, and it's divided into halves. The septum, there's no connection between the two section of the heart.
Yeah.
So sometimes if there's an opening, that's why the babies are blue or something like that. Because some of the deoxygenated blood will come into the oxygenated side of the heart. So we call this the right side, right heart, and this is the left. The heart is situated on the left side. So if you have pain here, think of the heart. Oh, I think I'm having some emotional problem here. Yeah. So these are these are the pulmonary arteries taking blood into the lungs. How to? We just draw it like this. I'm not an artist. And in here there's all these air sacs and so forth. And the vessel enter into it and carrying deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. So as we breathe out carbon dioxide, and then we breathe in oxygenated blood or oxygen. And then there's to cut it short, there's diffusion of gases here. These veins, they then go into, we have veins and then we have venules, and then it goes into very tiny like capillaries, which then surrounds the air cells, air sacs, and picks up the oxygen and gives off the carbon dioxide, deoxygenated blood. Then the lungs, then we breathe out, and then the plants, they give us oxygen and they take the carbon dioxide. So that's how God made it. Then this oxygenated blood then is picked up by the four pulmonary veins, which then takes it to the left atrium or left auricle, some books call it. Then when the left auricle contracts, it pushes the oxygenated blood into the left ventricles. And when the left ventricle contracts, it then pushes it through the aorta, the main vessels of the body. And then this vessel, the aorta, this is very complicated, but the aorta is the main branch of the artery in the body, which then has branches that supplies the head, then it travels down, supplies the chest, travels down, it supplies the abdomen and so forth, and all the body have the arteries that supplies them. And the vessels first start off with a big one, and then it goes into smaller one, and then it goes into very tiny one, into capillaries, and then it goes and feeds all that. Then there's another system called lymphatic system. If the heart pumps, but there's some fluid in the tissues, then the lymphatic system then absorbs all those fluids, and then it takes it through its gland, lymphatic glands, to filter bacteria and toxins, and then puts them back into the circulation. And all those takes place are very complicated, but that's why we are still healthy if we look after ourselves. So arteries carries oxygenated blood. All arteries in the body carries oxygenated blood, means the blood has oxygen in it and it's bright red. All veins carry deoxygenated blood. All veins in the body carry deoxygenated blood. So we have our veins, our main one that goes to the head and drains all the deoxygenated blood from the upper parts of the body and brings it back into the right atrium, the upper part of the one. And then this valve open, the atrium contracts, pushes the deoxygenated blood into the ventricles, the right ventricles. The right ventricles then contracts and then sends the blood through these pulmonary veins to take it, pulmonary arteries, sorry, to take it into the lungs to be oxygenated. And then it picks up by the pulmonary arteries, pulmonary veins, 4 pulmonary veins back into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, contracts and then sends it through the aorta throughout the body, so the circulation goes that way. So the valve keeps the blood moving in the right direction, it doesn't go back. If it slept, then that's when you get problem. The deoxygenated blood from the lower parts of the body is picked up by this inferior vena cava. That's the superior vena cava, that's the inferior vena cava, and so the blood is drained that way. So that's how the blood gets oxygenated. It's the lung that does the work. So when it's good to breathe properly so that we get, but then not only that, the diet is important too. If we don't eat a lot of cabbage, then we can lack iron too. How many lungs do we have? We have one on the left side, and we have one on the right side. The one on the right side has 3 lobes, and the one on the left has 2 lobes. I think, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, it's, I take it out because it might confuse people. But just remember, the lungs oxygen, puts oxygen, takes oxygen, and then the vessels picks it up, takes it to the heart to pump it around again.
Okay. Thanks, Esther.
I just want to make us aware with some of these things that will happen if we don't. There's a lot of things, but we'll just pick out some of these. So the function of protein foods, they supply material for growth and repair of body tissues, and they serve as regulators of body process. And if we don't eat a lot of carbohydrates and the body needs energy, then the body will get it from protein supplies. And then the lack of protein, we can become weak if we don't eat enough protein. At first it might be small, but then if we delay to supply protein food, if we delay to eat protein food, after weeks or months, symptoms like fatigue, loss of weight, skin changes, reduced resistance to infection, weakness, anemia, slow healing of wounds, abnormal accumulation of fluids in the body tissues can happen. So all those are symptoms of lack of protein. It might not happen if only a little bit, but if we continue to ignore it, then this is what will happen. Loss of weight, skin changes, fatigues, reduced resistance to infection, weakness, anemia, slow healing of wounds, abnormal fluids in the tissues. And sometimes we go to the doctor, they give us maybe some medicine, but we should be thinking of food first. And before we should not be taking medicine. Some of the food that we have listed on the board, they come from legumes. Legumes and vegetables, a good source of proteins. Wheat, wholemeal bread, peanuts, beans, all those are protein foods. Also some protein in the dark leafy green vegetables. Soya flour is good. We used to have soya flour. Neil and Caroline used to send it before. We ran a health food shop. And then we used to, if we make multi-grain bread, then we put a little bit of soya flour inside too. And that is a complete balanced diet. I've talked about the bad side of the fats. If we eat too much fat, then it can block the lumen of the arteries, and then we can get that condition again, hardening of the arteries, which the blood cannot get through. It can affect the heart. It can affect the limb. Some people have blue toes. That is due to a blockage of the arteries. So think of this when we are, especially when we are counseling patients, that those things should go through our minds. What has this person has, and so forth. Fat is cholesterol and fat. They are good. We need cholesterol in our system. But if they are abnormally deposited in the arterial walls, then that's when we get problem. Vitamin D, we get it with the sun on our skin, 15 minutes, so like that in the sun is good. Early morning sun and afternoon sun. At midday it's very hot here in Honiara. And we'll do a bit of this tomorrow. So I'm thinking of, because we normally just cook food, Melanesians, we normally just cook food, we don't eat raw things, but raw, it's good to eat vegetables raw. Then we can get all the vitamins that we need and the minerals. So I've asked Caroline if she can just give us a demonstration of providing a raw dish, simple way, because in Melanesia not many people have money, so we might be putting a lot of varieties in which we don't really have it out in our garden. So if we can just have what is available in the garden, so that when we're preparing meals, we can use some things raw. We can eat something raw.